absolutely.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Sit Down for Stand Up. I've got with me one-liner comedian Chris Norton Walker. Hey, Chris.
Hello, very well, thank you.
Good, good. So, yeah, reason for the podcast is to people to learn
Oh, there's
about,
a reason for it. Okay, great, perfect. That's nice. Good.
well, they didn't start off with an agenda, but it's sort of gone down the road of, teaching aspiring comics or new comics. I'm a new comic myself. I'm a complete amateur at the moment, still just doing the open mic set, and it's sort of
It's fine.
learning,
We're all complete amateurs. Please do not worry about it. It's all good.
it's learning from,
Sometimes flying by the seat of our pants, we don't know what we're doing.
so is that the secret? Everyone's just truly winging it.
Don't tell anybody, but that's exactly it. Nobody knows what they're doing. Although there is some, kind of skill and art to it, but sometimes you get on stage and you're just like, I don't know. Let's see what happens.
So you'd say there's no such thing as a finished article then?
Finished. I think you can be close to a finished article, and you can have an idea about like how how things are going to look, how things are going to sound. No joke is basically a finished article, but just because there's going to be bits within a joke when you tell it that you just accentuate certain parts of it that you weren't realizing before, and then somebody heckles you a topper, and you're just like, thank you. I'm just gonna write that one down. I'll use that next time. So yeah, it's I think your set is just going to constantly evolve.
Okay. And so how did we'll go straight to the beginning.
Oh, I see. Fine. Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Sure.
Why?
Sure. Sure. That's
And
fine.
I want to know about the grueling process, Chris. How and why did we get into comedy?
So I remember when I was first thinking about doing it, where I went along to a local gig, and I think that's the best thing to do. You go to local gigs, whatever level you are. I'm going to go to one tonight, just to kind of hang out with some friends, and chat to other comedians as well. But I think a good thing to do if you're just starting it, just go and watch as much as you can do. But I had it in my head that I kind of fancied it. I kind of went. I've been like funny at school. I like I've I've I I think I can write a joke. Maybe I've always watched it on TV, that sort of stuff, and I kind of went along. I went along to a gig that had about 50, 60 people in locally. Spoke to the promoter afterwards and kind of went, "I'm sorry, I'm kind of thinking about doing it." And he went, "Don't." So,
The end. Roll credits.
yeah, right. I think he was trying to instill this idea of it is not an easy thing to do. It is not waking up day one, writing some jokes, getting on TV, kind of being on, kind of Life of the Apollo, that sort of thing, after 3 or 4 gigs.
Mm.
And I think that's a good thing to kind of live by, just because it's all a grind. It's all um, just putting yourself out there as much as you can do and going, I think this is the right thing to do, and this is the thing I want to go and do like the most. It when it goes well, it is the most fun. But certainly, when I first approached that man and said, I think I want to do it, he kind of went, no, you don't. And I think that's the right kind of way to think about things.
Mm. So was
Because
you
if,
sort of like,
if they
no,
think,
I am going to do it. Like, it's like,
yeah,
fuck you almost, I am going to do this.
yeah. Well, yeah, and I think it was a bit of that of if somebody says, yeah, absolutely, come and do this, come and do that, you're a bit just like, oh, maybe comedy's nice and easy. Maybe there's not going to be the kind of levels of rejection where you send multiple emails out per day and get no response whatsoever. That they're not even looked at, not even rejection emails. They're not even looked at. The amount of kind of Facebook messages you send out, kind of going, "Hey, I'm available for this," just hear absolutely nothing, and then you go through your messages and just kind of like see that you've sent the same promoter like 7 messages over like 4 years, kind of going, "Hey, can I come and do it? Can I come and do it?" And I think when you speak to actors, it's the sort of the same level of like rejection when they go into like auditions. But I think for us, there's a higher hit rate.
Okay.
So I think with actors, they will have, auditions where it'll be kind of like 90-95% rejection. So they'll just never hit back. At least with us, we can probably find if someone said, right, I need you to go and do a gig tomorrow, you would go and contact everybody and probably find one. Whereas I think with actors, they can't kind of do that. They're going to go, well, I can't work for the next 4 months because nobody will, kind of nobody's putting anything on. Whereas, the nice thing about comedy is you could probably, and I don't want to try it, but I do also want to try it, where you could go and do a gig every single day.
Mm. Yeah, you could. I mean, I don't know what caliber of room you get, but certainly in London, you could pretty much there's comedy every single day of the week, and when you get to a certain level, you could sort of do one every single night. So you do acting as well, do you? Because I've my comedy is I'm a storyteller. I
Boo! Rubbish! Shorten it down. Shorten it down. 17 words. 17 words. That's all you need.
the thing about one-liners that I how do you remember them all? Does acting help with that, of learning your
Um,
lines?
so, am I an actor? That is a good question. I think I have to drama school for that. I have done some acting work. Does acting help with stand up? There is overlaps in terms of you are putting yourself out there and you are getting on stage and you are being sort of a different person when you're up there.
Mm.
Does acting help? I don't know, to some degree, because you're going and doing something. I learn my jokes in a very unique, I think, fashion. I think one-liners will often do it in a very unique way because there's just so many that you are taking up on stage with you. If you are doing, in kind of your case, like a 10-minute set,
Mhm.
you may have 4 stories, 5 stories.
Um, 3 stories.
Great. Okay, fine. You're doing 3 stories while you're up there in
Mm.
a 10-minute set at approximately, you know, 6 to 8 jokes per minute for a one-liner. I'm taking up 80 jokes.
Mm.
So I've got to have in my head, and then I will have other jokes that I will kind of say, right, they may be going for ruder, they may be going for more intellectual, never usually happens. They may be going for like a different style of thing. So I've also got to take up other jokes with me. So
Right. So
yeah,
you change it as you read the room.
yeah, and I think that comes with experience and comes with, as I kind of say, go along to gigs. And when you're watching gigs, especially, you can just be in the background. You can kind of think to yourself, oh, that comedian did a joke about this. Now, the audience liked it from that person beforehand, who was on before, but they
Mm.
didn't like it from this comedian. Why is that? And also, you can kind of go, right, with an audience, if they trust you, you can kind of go, right, I'm going to try different things out. I'm going to try if they want a bit of playful, a bit of rude, a bit of banter, a wordy one, a shorter one, because it's a really, it's really distracted gig, that sort of thing. So yeah, I will certainly take up with me probably 100-ish jokes in my head, but I will only maybe do kind of 75 of them.
Right. So you got the repertoire to bounce off. And with one thing I've always been curious about, with we like say like storytellers, observational comics, they used to do like
Rubbish, rubbish, rubbish.
we used to do, I don't. Okay, let me just put it straight to the question. How do one-line comedians deal with, say, hecklers and crowd work?
So I think it's very interesting, right? A lot of one-liner comedians will be very fourth wally, if
Mm.
that makes sense.
Yes.
So they will say they're present in the room, but I think they're so distracted by trying to get every single word right and trying to remember the next joke that comes. Or it's a case of one-liners themselves don't often, unless you're the right personality type, lend themselves to being banterable.
Okay.
So a lot of one-liner comedians will go on and it will look like it's a bit over-rehearsed. It's a bit like you are just reciting lines. You can get away with that a bit more in the one-liners because there isn't usually that level of interaction. With what I do, and the personality type I am, especially on stage, I will sort of banter first and then ask questions later. So I will really go into them and really be like high tempo with the jokes. And in the right sort of gig, you'll be kind of plate spinning, where you'll be bantering with one person over here, you'll be doing a joke to another person over here, you'll be calling another person's, kind of like a rude name over there, and they're all kind of coming together in one, and everybody's kind of kind of laughing at kind of different points, but also the same points, because everybody is having fun, but also everybody is kind of being interacted with. I've seen one-liner comedians before go on stage, and if their material isn't funny, good, or they don't connect with the audience, because as I say, kind of one-liners can be a bit kind of disconnected. They can really struggle a bit. But from my point of view, I am more inclined to kind of like do a joke, banter a bit, then do a topper for a joke, and then move on.
You're not just fire. It's sort of
No, and I think certainly when you're kind of starting out, like for newer comedians, there is this idea of let's just slow it all down and do one-liners at a very slow pace and a very kind of deadpan pace. That's absolutely fine for about 8 to 10 minutes. Anything over that time, and the audience want to see, and in inverted commas, like see not only you move about, but kind of like the back and forth a bit of those things, and you have to work out what the best way for you to do it is. So I will definitely kind of banter first and ask questions later. Something like Mark Simmons will, kind of ask questions of the audience and ask how he's going to, kind of answer pun wise about kind of hobbies and interests and kind of stuff like that. Other people will have different like entry points into the audience, but they won't necessarily, or they'll be very subtle things where they'll laugh at their own jokes to make it feel as though they are connecting.
Okay. So like before they do it, they'll chuckle to themselves, so it almost prepares the audience.
Yeah, yes.
Or
so they'll
almost
beforehand and afterwards to make it feel as though they're all having fun in the room. I've seen that before.
And does that also make it look more spontaneous and less rehearsed?
Yes, I think so. There's certain, you need to, as any comedian, try and find a way to connect with your audience, but make it feel as though you are just coming up with these off the top of your head. I often tell to people who don't think they can do stand-up that you can quite easily just have a couple of friends together and then you just stand up in front of them at the pub. If you were, we're at the pub, lazing against the chair, kind of being funny, that's sort of the same thing, isn't it? There's no real difference between, and in some London gigs there is no difference, between you standing up in a pub and being funny to 4 people and at a London gig standing up and being funny to 2 people.
Very true. I owned a pub for 4 years, and that after I got rid of it 3 months ago is when I got into comedy, because I felt owning a pub where there's only 3 or 4 people ever in there is constant crowd work.
It certainly can be, absolutely.
And you get the most the banter in a British pub is as dark, or as great as it gets. The insults you hear chucked everyone's way is just spectacular.
Do you think there's a difference between crowd work and banter?
Yes,
Okay,
because I think when you're bantering, say, with your friends or your customers, it's just for them. But with crowd work, you've got to appease everyone else also in the room.
interesting. Okay,
So,
fine.
like, say if a regular was being an idiot, Joe, like, I'm trying to think of the top of my head. Like, I'd insult them,
I'm sorry to put you on the spot like this. I do
yeah,
apologise.
completely. So, you know, I'm trying to think of a point here. So, if you call someone like a customer's like, oh, you're being a dickhead, you're being an idiot, you're doing it one for one, but the whole crowd wouldn't get involved in that.
But why can't you do that sort of thing on a larger scale? So I would say I don't really do crowd work, and certainly when I MC, I don't ask people what they do for a living because I don't care. And a lot of jobs these days are too complicated. I think if you went back 30 years, you would be like uh, IT, you deliver milk, you would kind of be like a stay-at-home parent. If there would like a teacher, like an accountant, those sorts of things. It'd be very easy to write 14 different variations on the 14 different jobs that were there. But now, if you are somebody, it's going to be IT, but it's going to be like I'm the HR director to the regional manager, and just like this means nothing, right?
I'm a data analyst for a fintech company. Well,
Sure, right, yeah, yeah,
what the
yeah.
hell?
So it's either that point you ask more questions, where you kind of go in and kind of go, right, well, tell me exactly what you do. That's the thing. I don't tend to do that. There's a certain play that happens with me in crowd work. Not only will people, for whatever reason, and I have no idea why, talk to me um, about strange, weird things that's happened throughout the day, whilst I'm on stage, by the way, right, all the time. Um, but also, I don't know if other people care as much about what other people do. If you can just chat to people and chat about, kind of where they've cut. I think a good one for like a UK audience, especially, is talking about where you're from,
Okay, yeah.
geography, right? Because there's always going to be somewhere that is a bit crapper than where you live. And there's always going to be
Every
somewhere,
area's got that crap area.
yeah, and there's always going to be somewhere that's nicer.
Yeah.
So if you can find in the room somebody from the shit bit and from the posh bit, you can just have this playful, kind of three-way different kind of conversation about it. And I
You could
think
do
that
that
is all.
anywhere you want. Anywhere in the
Yeah, yeah,
country, you could do that.
yeah. You should probably learn where the really shit towns are around the UK, so that you can go to one of those depending how close the proximity is. But yeah, and maybe kind of learn where some of the posher parts are. But that's a really easy thing to do than talking about jobs, because jobs these days are so complicated or so boring. What does your best friend do for a job?
Okay, he's a
Hey,
groundskeeper manager at a primary school.
I mean, I think that's quite an interesting job, really, right? But like a lot of mine, I can't be sure, because
Mm.
I'm just like they've told me once, and I'm like, they work in a building and they do something with computers. Like who, kind of who knows? But I think with geography, you kind of go, where do you live? Oh, you live there. Oh God, I wouldn't want to live there. Where do you live? Oh, you live there. I kind of want to go and live there. That sounds really posh. Just kind of have that play of let's all kind of get together and talk about, especially from a really English point of view, kind of where the status lies within the room.
Okay, and does it all bring them all together as well?
Well, it does that weird thing where it separates everybody off, because if they live in the posh bit, that they feel superior. If they don't live, if they live in the bad bit, then they feel a bit inferior. But I think everybody can kind of come together when you find somebody that lives in the really shit bit or the really really posh bit, and you're just like, we're all going to turn on them. But yeah, I said, if you can, there are a lot of people out there who will do crowd work where they'll be very good at coming back if they've got a job or they're going out with somebody or kind of that sort of thing. But it's these people who play with an audience that just get the most out of them. I've seen comedians at open mic level go on and clip farm.
Okay, yes.
Right?
Yeah. Clickbait,
Now,
yeah, for social medias.
yeah. But the problem was with that, and what he didn't understand was that you have to be funny first, and you have to like connect with an audience, and you have to gain their trust in order for them to go, if I give him information, he's going to be funny with it. Because he went on stage and he just tried to be too harsh with people too early and try and banter with them, and they, weren't ready within the gig itself, but also weren't ready with him. If you are, I think a lot of these like American comedians, when they're headlining, they'll do 45 minutes, 50 minutes, right? So you've got time to go on stage, introduce yourself, introduce what you're going to do, introduce how you're going to do it, introduce, kind of like your thoughts, your feelings, who you are as a person. And then half an hour in, when they've got a bit drunk, of course there's going to be a bit of crowd work. Of course there is, right? Because, also they need to fill time. But over here, you can't unless something has already crazily happened in the room. You can just go, right, that was crazy. I'm going to bring that on stage because I want to talk about it, right? Unless that has happened, or whilst you're coming on stage, something weird happens, then you've got to be funny first. You've got to establish that you are a funny person, I think.
Would say a good metaphor for it would be, say, if your mate calls you a dickhead, no problem. But if a stranger on the street called you a dickhead, well, we've got a problem. You need to build that rapport first.
So it depends. A stranger can call you a dickhead if you have already connected with them in some way, right? So I think with banter, I'm not really kind of keen on that term, but I think it's a good one to choose, because with banter, both parties have to enter into it. You as a comedian are on stage, so you've entered into it anyway. You as an audience have signed up by coming in, sitting down, paying for it, to be bantered with. Now, yes, you as an audience need to be comfortable and need to trust, and that comes into it too. But with banter, both parties need to enter into it. If just one has entered into it, it's bullying.
Yeah.
And, I've certainly seen it before, as I was saying, where a comedian goes on stage, the audience did not trust him, did not want to be talked to, and then he goes into like kind of riff. Of course, it's a him, right? He goes into kind of riffing about like, oh, you fat cow, shit, share car, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And the audience have just gone, no, this is not what we want. This is not. The worst I've ever seen anybody do on stage, and I use that loosely, right, was we turned up to a gig in the Midlands. The opening act, who seemed a bit nervous anyway, looked at this room full of about 60, 70 people, and kind of went, they're not my people. And I went, what are you talking about? They're an audience. They'll laugh. I've done this gig before. They're fine. And he went, no, they're not my people. They're not my people. So I went on as MC, introduced him on, and whilst he was headed to the stage through the tables, he started to banter really badly with the other tables that were there and started to call them names. And he was booed off stage without even getting to the stage. It was literally about 25 seconds of him walking through, bantering with these, kind of table of women who were a bit drunk, but they were fine. Bantering with this table of men who were a bit drunk, but they were fine. And they just started to turn on him because he was being a dick.
Yeah.
It wasn't them being a dick. he can blame them, but he was the one being a dick. That's the only time I've ever seen someone be booed off stage when they're not on stage.
So you'd say build the trust first, and then
Yes.
yeah. Would you
You
say
have to
anyone?
build.
Would you say anyone who sort of heckles a comedian or speaks during a set, then you've got free autonomy to not bully, but
Yeah.
you're open now to a dialogue.
So I think there are kind of 5 different types of heckling, and by heckling I do mean kind of interruptions. You can go from like somebody just coughing very slightly to somebody kind of standing up and shouting at you saying you're rubbish, right? But also in the middle you have kind of dropping a plate, phone going off, kind of those sort of things. If somebody turns to their neighbour and you don't know why they're turning to their neighbour, you can maybe say, oh, what's going on? But they may be saying, oh, I'm not enjoying this. Oh, I'm really enjoying this. Oh, I'm going to the bar. What do you want? So actually asking them sometimes isn't really worth it if they're just kind of mumbling away. If they're standing up and saying that they hate you, then yes, you can go into them, right? But it's also whose responsibility is it? Because if somebody in the room is too drunk to be there, is it your responsibility as an act to deal with? Is it the promoter's responsibility as the promoter to deal with them? If it's promoter and MC as well, is it the MC's job to just kind of like have a little word? Is it the bar manager's idea to just kind of come in and just say, well, I kind of overall own all of this, so you've got to go. And it really depends if they've paid any money to be there as well. So yes, you can absolutely go in harshly on somebody, but I've seen comedians before go in harshly and the room turn, because the room as a collective can see that this person's just having a bit of a banter, this person's just trying to have fun.
Unjustified.
And then because I think what happens is if actually you on stage are having a good time, the audience will have a good time. And I think sometimes people will be very vocal with their good time. If they're kind of joining in and just kind of going, hey mate, that was great, that's not, that's a heckle because they've interrupted. Yeah. But also it's a very positive one. You won't necessarily, if somebody says, hey, really enjoyed that joke, I'm crying with laughter, you won't just be like, fuck you, dickhead. That sort of thing, right? That's like a weird thing to do, but it's not. It's just finding that balance and reading the room again of how is that coming across.
Okay.
If they don't, so my worst heckle of my career, in inverted commas career, right, was a silent one. So I was doing a gig in London to about 30 people. This was a while ago, right? And I wasn't doing very well. Fine. Yeah. I saw somebody on the front row kind of shuffle a bit in their chair. And I, kind of noticed them lean to one side. I'd be like, oh, this is interesting. What they did on the front row of a comedy gig was they got a book out and started to read the book. And I was a bit like, oh, okay, fine. And then in a nice playful way, I took the book off them and the whole room just kind of went, no, give it back. You kind of lost them at that point, right? So it can depend, kind of how the heckle comes across. I've had people asleep in my audience. I've had people being thrown out because they were doing sexual things. Kind of those sort of things. So you've just got. I had a whole room full of people last week heckle me, but they were heckling because they were having a great time and they were joining in. And it's about where you sort of draw the line of. It's not necessarily like a 1D line, but it's a line of how much you will allow an audience to have fun and how much fun you want to have and what you want, because we are there to allow an audience to have fun, but it's got to be controlled chaos a bit.
I am with you, yeah.
So if the whole audience is heckling because you've talked to Pete in the corner, and then somebody else has heckled, somebody else from the audience has heckled Pete, and that sort of thing. And then Pete's heckling back, and then Pete's wife, who was not sitting next to him because she doesn't sit next to him at gigs, is heckling from somewhere else. And then somebody, kind of Pete's neighbour down, he's always like this, even at home he's always like this. You just kind of think there's a nice vibe, and people are really having fun in the room.
You're still controlling it.
Yeah, and all of those things were technically heckles, but you don't want to stop them, because if you stop them, then you are stopping that audience having the most fun they could have. I've seen acts kind of, when somebody has wanted to, to banter, to join in, kind of go, no, shush, which sort of makes everybody else in the audience kind of go, oh, well, I guess we'll just watch then.
How would you respond? So, how would you respond, Chris? Say if you're on your set and someone goes in the audience, like, "Arr!" and you go, sorry, what was that? And then they don't repeat themselves.
So, I think it sort of depends what they say. If you can't hear it,
yes,
but other people around them can, you can kind of go, what was that? They won't answer. Will their neighbour answer? And if their neighbour won't answer, you can kind of go, right, that's fine. And then there are kind of stock lines about, I remember my first drink, kind of stuff like that. Right?
Yeah.
It depends how much it interrupts you. If you're just getting to the end and somebody goes, rah, 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 just ignore it. Just plow through.
The juice isn't worth the squeeze.
Yeah. That is the other option. Unless it interrupts and disrupts the other people around them, then probably just get on with it. Because people are going to make noise. People are going to do things. I've had people in the audience with Tourette's. I mean, even people with like funny laughs can be disruptive, but in a fun way. So if they make some sort of noise, it could be like an involuntary noise. You don't want to kind of go in and like slam somebody and just like, oh, you have a condition, I shouldn't have done that. Kind of that sort of thing, right? So you just got to play it by ear a little bit in terms of, they've made a noise. Do I acknowledge the noise and move on? Do I try and go in? Because if you've just finished a joke and you're riding high, you might as well kind of go in and see what's going on with that noise, because you've got a bit of time and leeway and kind of goodwill. Whereas if you're just setting up for one, or if you're just coming to the conclusion of one, you might as well leave that. But what you can say as well is, right, we're just going to put that noise on hold and we'll come back to it, finish the joke off, and then kind of go, I'm sorry, were you saying something stupid? You were saying something stupid. Okay, it's fine. And I think with all crowd work, with all interaction, have an out. So if you are an MC and for some reason like the crowd work isn't really hitting, or because the great thing about crowd work from an MC's perspective is you look like a genius. What you'll do is you'll talk to the first person and get nothing. You'll talk to the second person and get nothing. You'll talk to the third person, and the third person will light the room up with how stupid their answer was. The audience won't remember the first two, but they will remember the last one. And being an MC, you can kind of go, well, this crowd work isn't getting me anywhere. I've not been very funny, but I know somebody who is. Please welcome.
Okay, you've always got that escape mechanism as an MC.
Yeah. So, but you can also have one as an act as well. You can kind of, there are ways of doing it. You can say shush. You can say no. You can say hold on. You can say tell me about it. Repeat it. You can, you can also get closer to them. You can get further away from them. You can turn the mic away. You can turn yourself away. I didn't hear what that says, but it looks like a weirdo. I'm just going to move the mic stand this time, right?
Yeah.
There are ways, theatricalized ways of making it all feel as though you have dealt with that person. Because if you don't deal with them, that's the thing as well. It may just continue, right, and just spread around. You want the whole audience to be together and having
unison.
Yeah, but having the same fun. If everybody's having the same fun, everybody can heckle at the same time. Everybody can laugh at the same time. if there are just pockets of people who are having a different fun because they're too drunk, they're too tired, they're too hot, they're too cold, kind of like they don't want to be there because they're there with a big party and they just want to go and flirt with somebody at the other side of the office rather than sitting in a dank basement somewhere, right? There's going to be lots of reasons for it. So you just have to work out while you're on stage in the half a second, in the 2 seconds, right? You kind of buy yourself some time as well, just to be like, right, has this man, of course it's man, right? Has this man
got me pass on that.
Okay, so has this man that's made a noise been making noise the entire way through? No, he's just making noise now. Okay, fine. Is he just coughing? Is he just doing something? Yeah. If you are going to talk to him, you can maybe look at him and kind of go, right, if he is going to be derogatory towards me and say, oh, this is rubbish, mate, or I've heard all these, or kind of that sort of thing, right? You can kind of look at him and you've already got something you planned in your head for what you look like, for what he looks like, right? But if he's been making noise the entire way through, you can then, if he's already been put down, you can then use other stock lines to put him down.
Okay. As someone who MCs, but like as well, would you rather them heckle you than a comedian on set? And also, as an MC, if say, like you said, that guy who absolutely pissed the crowd off, going through it, pissing them off, how do you bring the room back?
So I think there's a couple of things here. One, when I MC, I don't use the H word.
You cool?
Yeah, I don't say the H word at all, right?
Okay.
Because if you say the H word, you put that word in people's heads.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Like with children, right? If you say don't touch that, they're going to go, oh, I can touch that. That is an option for me to do. If you say don't heckle, people just go, oh, I forgot about heckling. Yeah, well, heckle. Okay, great. Yeah, heckle. That's it.
Yeah.
You've got to do it in a more subtle way. You can say, be respectful, they've come a long way. Or you can kind of say, if you have any questions, kind of ask me. If you have anything to say about the night, come and talk to me, because you're an MC as the conduit between, the audience and the acts, right? But if you use the H word, you will get in people's minds. But I think just the subtlety of just saying be respectful. If somebody's being a bit disrespectful, you can say, let's kind of be a bit more respectful. So it's just got a bit more leeway to it. Because if you say heckle, if you say don't heckle doesn't mean anything really. Because, as we talked about before, there are different types of noises that people make.
Yes.
And there are different types of interactions, So I think just be respectful covers a whole load of bases between not getting up and going to the toilet, not getting up and going and kind of getting a drink. Not if you are going to get up, don't scrape your chair on the floor while you're doing it, right?
Moving on side, it's cool.
Yeah. So there are ways of kind of covering it all just to make sure the behaviour stays, within kind of acceptable boundaries. What's the second part of your question?
So the guy who walked through called, like everyone and their mum are dickheads before.
Oh yeah.
How would you bring a room back after disdain?
So is this an actor or an audience member?
The act has pissed off the audience, booed off. How do you reunionize everyone?
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry, I do so many bad gigs that somebody walking through and calling everybody an idiot in the crowd and then going home again. Could be actor, could be audience. So the only thing you can do, and this is an option as an MC, and people don't often see this as an option, is a hard reset.
Okay.
So you will go on, you will just say, well, that's live laughing I did, that kind of that's live comedy, that's what happens in the room. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it goes really badly. Please don't worry about it. Just have a brief kind of 10-15 minute break. Go and get another drink. We'll see you in 10 minutes time.
Right. Okay.
Have a hard reset, right? And also sometimes there's something to be said for, and if you can do this, it's good. Uh, Turning on all the lights, just kind of resetting the vibes of the room, turning on all the lights, and then having kind of 5-10 minutes of all the lights being on, and then subtly kind of turning them all down, so that the room kind of resets itself a bit.
Awesome. Never thought of that. That's yeah. Oh,
So you
effort.
are kind of
Bit of a
getting
restart.
all the bad juju out, all the bad vibes out,
Mm.
by turning on all the lights, sort of resetting it in people's minds, and kind of going, right, we're going to reset it now. We're going to have a really nice time. Forget about what happened. This is a new gig that's starting.
Okay. So if the lights go on after I performed, I take it personally.
Only if all the lights go on and they start playing like music, and they're just like saging the room,
Yeah.
from whatever happened, however
Good a
bad it.
seance there and then. So, Chris, we've been in comedy a while. This is the question I ask every single podcast, and it's my favourite question. It's a two-parter.
Here we
It's
go.
all about the second part. What has been your highlight, your favourite moment in comedy? And
Okay.
the best bit, what time did we bomb the hardest? Because everyone's been there.
Yes, no, and I think that's a nice thing about comedy. The nice thing about kind of like this art form, really, is that everybody will eventually bomb, right? Now you have to define what a bomb is. I don't think a bomb is sometimes what people think it is. I would define a bomb as you go on stage and you're getting literally nothing. And I don't mean a couple of titters here and there, because a couple of titters, at least you've got something from it. But a proper bomb is when you go on, everybody hates you, the cricket silence, right? Now, I'll maybe come back to that one when I can think about one, because it's been a while. But there have been lots of nice times in comedy where you sort of not necessarily have the perfect gig, but everything is going your way. You're already there with a heckle comeback before they've even heckled, right? They're laughing before you've got to the stage. And you can't do any wrong. Even you kind of slip a new bit of material in and everything's perfect. There are a couple of times when that happens. I think usually throughout the year you will have 2 or 3 gigs that are like verging on perfect, where everything comes together. It's really, you are facing the right way. They are all, we're all going together on the same train, right? There will be a couple of gigs as well that will just be difficult and don't work properly, and you just kind of go along and you're just like, why am I doing this? I hate comedy. It's rubbish. You kind of phone people on the way home, just kind of you don't want to hear how bad this gig was, kind of how badly we bombed. So I think you're going to get both throughout the year, right? What was my best moments in comedy? I think certainly so I did the gala show of the Leicester Comedy Festival to about 2.3k people, I think it was. And that was, a really nice experience, because weirdly I opened, but all the other people who were on the bill have been on TV. So it was just nice to kind of be in that sort of echelon. There's also nice moments, kind of backstage, I guess, where you have met some celebrity, like celebrity comedians, and they know who you are, and they say hello, and you're just like, oh yeah, actually, I do know that person from the telly. Kind of that's always good.
I always find quite a funny one. So I've interviewed comedians here and calling comedians by their first name. I find
what, TV ones?
yes.
Oh yeah, great, yeah.
That took me back at first.
Yeah, but I think this is a nice circuit to be on, because everybody to a person has been through exactly every level, right? They have been at those gigs where you've turned up and kind of gone, this is going to be an absolute shit show, and I don't really kind of want to be here. And then they kind of turn around and make it good. Or they've been at those gigs where you just put your bag at the back of the room and then go on somewhere else, right? Yes. They have been in the same rooms that we've all been in. They've been in the same situations we've all been in. There's no kind of separation off between, like with actors, I think they have to be in the zone and they have to be very much like, I have to focus on what I'm doing and I have to do this and I have to do that. And I have to be very selfish about what I'm doing, and kind of self-centered, not necessarily bad, but kind of self-centered, kind of like an acting thing. But I think with comedians, we are basically we have a massive ego, so we feel as though we can get on stage and entertain anybody, but also not much of an ego, because we've all been in these terrible situations, driving around at kind of 3 o'clock in the morning, stopping at a service station. It's like getting changed in your car, right? That is not, very showbiz at all. But we've all been through that. So
I think, like with like some actors, they can rely on nepotism. I don't think that really exists in the comedy world. You can get a leg up, but
sure.
At the end of the day, on the stage, it is you.
Yeah, and you've got to be funny. There was like a famous example who, I think it was like an 80s example, who said, even if you're Jack Nicholson, you go on stage doing stand-up, and if you're not funny, after 2 minutes, the crowd will turn against you. You could be the nicest possible person. If Steve Irwin is doing stand-up, right?
Yeah.
Nicest possible person. But if he wasn't funny, after 2.5 minutes, the crowd would kind of go, oh, this is a bit rubbish, isn't it? I hate him. So it is very much, you have got, and I think it's, you can learn how to do it, but you've got to want to really push yourself to do it. So somebody can say, here's a load of jokes for you to tell.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that charisma, thank you, that likability, and those other elements that go into it, then you won't succeed.
I could take every one of your jokes now. You could send me a list. I would go on stage, do them, and I would bomb. Because your jokes they've got your persona attached to it.
They're not that bad, those jokes. They're not that bad. Some of them are, absolutely right. Some of them are.
But you know what I mean. You've written your jokes for you to match your personality. That's how they work.
But I think it's an interesting thing here. I think one-liner comedians are seen as being like there's no kind of connection between what you're joking about and yourself. But if you can, so I often say jokes themselves should be long story short. So as we were talking about earlier, like if you go on and have like a 3-minute joke that you can condense down to 17 words, great, because there's also some personal connection to it. If you just go on and I do not like the term, do not use the term dad jokes, right? Dad jokes often don't relate to anything.
Yeah.
A lot of puns and kind of those sort of things don't relate to the teller. If you can write a one-liner that relates to the teller, but also is 17 words long, then you're kind of cracking into gold, really. And I think kind of that is the nice thing about kind of one-liners and jokes themselves, that if you can, even if the joke doesn't, but the character does kind of relate to the joke, then you've got more, the audience is more trusting of you. Whereas if you just go on as a one-liner comedian and just do pun, you don't learn anything about that person because they're not real. But if you can make them feel just a little bit real, then they'll trust you more.
It was like they're learning about you as you go along.
Yeah, I mean, none of my jokes are about me in any way. You won't learn anything about me, but you'll think you have.
Right.
You know, so you're kind of go, oh, that's interesting about him. No, that is not true in any way. But you think it's true because of what I look like and how I sound, and you kind of those things.
And so a question I ask, Chris, is so as it we're experienced in this. If you could give sort of one bit of advice to somebody thinking about doing comedy,
Don't,
yeah, but
don't, don't do it. Don't.
they're nervous on stage, what would it be?
What about being nervous on stage?
Yeah, or they don't want to go, they're scared to do comedy.
Okay, so I think there's two different things here. I think one, anybody can do stand-up comedy. Not everybody though can be a comedian. Not everybody has the mindset to go and drive for 3 hours, then do 2 minutes at the Gong Show, and then drive for 3 hours home. Right? People don't have the kind of mental capacity to do that. To miss out on birthdays, parties, christenings, kind of whatever it is. To go, I've got to go and entertain 12 strangers in a room, right? And you know, kind of hours on the road, hours of rejection emails, hours of just kind of going, how do I phrase this in the right way? I don't know, I can't get it right. Hours of that. But I think anybody can just stand on stage and say words. They may be funny, they may not be funny. You know, it's a bit like best man speeches.
Oh,
a good best man speech is people want to laugh because they know it's going to be like a little bit bantery, maybe a little bit chaotic, maybe a little bit fun. Like there's going to be time and thought put into it. And I think that's what you kind of forget when you go on stage, that the audience want to have fun. The audience they are there to laugh and have a good time. So if you can be halfway funny or halfway likable, halfway charismatic, then that's half the battle over, right? Because you eat. So there was a good example of this. I took an act all the way, very, very new act, right? He'd done about 3 or 4 gigs, maybe not even that. All the way to Lincoln, which is like 3 hours away. He was on in the middle. He got on stage and had rehearsed what he was going to do. Did about 90 seconds and then froze. But the audience was still with him because they liked him and they liked how he looked and they liked what he was talking about. But he just got on stage and froze. If he had just said, thanks, I've forgotten it, the whole room would have just melted around and kind of gone, that, you know, it's a really hard thing to go into. It's a really hard thing to do, of course, you know. I couldn't be real with it all. But instead, he just kind of waved me on and I had to just very sadly take his shoulder and just kind of take him off. But the whole room was with him. And I think if you can just show that just a bit of vulnerability, a bit of likability, a bit of you being a normal person on stage, then people will forgive a lot of things.
Not less. The human element to it. You've humanized yourself.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time we sort of forget because we go on stage as partial characters, right? It's an extension of us, but we have filtered all the normal stuff out, all the sort of all the emotion out that isn't fun emotions, right?
Yes.
So we put all of those out. But actually, you know, for longer Edinburgh shows, or if you want to do very very emotive stuff, which you can do in a 10-15 minute section, just go on and tell people in a funny way, like, about your trauma, about your life, about what's happened to you. And the other comedians are going to struggle because they are all playing roles. But if you go on and you're very honest with this and you're very fragile with it, in the right rooms they can absolutely explode and they'll be absolutely with you, and everybody will come over to you and you can talk about it afterwards. I think a lot of people put this idea of kind of banter on, that we have to be kind of upbeat and bantery, but sometimes if you can control it, you go on and you just sit there, you just go, I've got a funny story, but it's a sad story, do you want to hear it? And then people are really engaged. And if you can do that, then you'll have much more engagement. And don't do it in one of these pubs where there's a quiz machine going, there's a dog barking, there's a man being sick in the corner. Don't do it that one, right? But if there is a gig where you just kind of think, oh, they like a bit of theatricality, there's a bit of, they will give us a bit of time on stage, you can absolutely go on and kind of storytelling. Why, if you are going to kind of storytell it a bit where you're just like, I'm going to tell you a story. It's a funny story. I'm going to tell you a story, but it's a bit heart-wrenching. Are you okay with that? And then if everybody says yes, then you're in, because they have given you time because they're interested. A lot of books will say you need a laugh every 8 to 10 seconds. You need it, right? You need a laugh every 10 seconds, otherwise you're rubbish.
That's what I was told.
But sure, but that's not quite right.
You
need to have a reaction. And either that is, as you're doing now, leaning in and nodding, or bantering back, or chatting, or talking to an audience member. Because you could argue, with the kind of crowd work you're doing, if you say, kind of, where do you live, what you do, is this your partner next to you? You've wasted 10 seconds, so the audience are going to switch off. But they're not switching off because they're interested. But you can also do interested through just bringing it all down and being very human with it all, or like emotive with it all. Just adding in those elements of humanity, because that's what we're laughing at, right? We are laughing at the very human side of society and behaviors and life, death, birth, kind of sex, those sorts of things. That's all we're talking about. But we're often talking about it in a very polarized fashion of, we're laughing at this. But we can also do it in the other side of, we are all laughing with this, not necessarily at it. We're laughing along with the sadness and the guilt and the other stuff that's on the side of it. And those are human emotions as well, but we've filtered all of those out for kind of stories about your dick, right?
I mean, you've really humanized the science of it. I mean, I'm performing tonight, and I think I'm going to do exactly what you've just said.
Oh shit! I'm really sorry. Yeah, so there is, as I say, there's something to be said for just going on and just being a real person, and just talking from the heart. You could probably do all the same jokes, but just reframing it a bit just adds gravitas, just adds humanity to it. And I think if you were in the pub and one of the regulars kind of said, did I ever tell you about the time my wife died? Like, you're in, right? You're not going to just go, fucking dead wife, idiot, right? You're not going to do that.
Yeah.
You're going to go, oh, I didn't know that. Tell me that, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's the same on stage, where if you can just find ways to just, right, so all over, it's about connecting with people. If you're going on and you're being nice and funny straight away and you're bantering with them and you're doing, kind of 10 jokes a minute and they're laughing loads and they're crying in the front, great. Perfect. But if you can also connect with them in terms of just standing on stage, just kind of going, I've got a story for you. Do you want to hear this story about this and this and this? Then they will say yes or no, but also they will kind of go, oh, that's a really interesting story that you told. And then maybe you can have a conversation with it afterwards. There are loads of comedians who go on stage and say, kind of, I've got this medical condition, my parents have got this medical condition, my partner's got this medical condition. And if you talk about them on stage, people will come up to you and just go, thank you for talking about those things. I've seen it before where an actor's been on stage talking about mental health and depression and kind of how they weren't really coping, but in a fun way, and somebody left the room and they came over the interval and just say, I'm sorry I had to leave the room while you're on. I was having a great time, but I was having too much of a good time, and it kind of hit too hard.
All of a sudden.
Yeah, right. And they really wanted to go and see them again because they were so invested in what they were saying that it was affecting them emotionally. So there are ways just to play stories. Boo, hate them, right? But to tell stories in ways that are like emotive, in ways that are not just humour.
Right, that's amazing. I'm definitely gonna try that tonight instead of just being full tempo, the loudest one in the room.
Yeah.
I am gonna bring it down to how I'm talking right now.
But you can also, if it needs it, you can play with tempo, right? So if you start off nice and quick, hi guys, how we doing? Great, okay, go, whoa, look at you, stupid haircut, right? And then just bring it all down, just very slowly, and then end on a really funny story, kind of sad story, right? Or if you want to try and do it, because how long are you doing later?
10. Doing a 10.
Okay. So if you want to start it off like that, we just go, hi guys, I have this story for you. It's a bit intense. Are you okay with that? Great. And then if you want to do it at that speed, but you can also play with speeds a bit. If they're not, if you know that the punch is coming up in like 90 seconds time, but they may need a little bit of interaction, you can maybe speed it up a little bit, right? Like to get to it or to kind of cut bits out. But then if actually after that story there's a massive great laugh, you can then interact at nice higher pacing, to keep it all nice and high and keep that tempo change. And then if you want to, you just kind of go, right, we've had our fun now. Right, we're ready for a second story. Strap in and just kind of bring it all down again.
So really mix it up depending on the story and the bit.
Yeah. And I think that's what people want. They don't want to see a single person standing on stage, like sort of doing nothing. So you want to have bits where you're pulling back, but you're also going into them. You want to have bits that are slower and faster, just to be a more kind of three-dimensional person.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to record tonight's set, and we'll see how it goes.
It'd be really interesting to put it like on the end of this podcast, just to see how you start and how it goes, and just kind of like have a video diary from the end, kind of going, Chris told me to do this.
That's how I'm going to start it. Yeah, so just the rush straight away.
Has he absolutely messed it up for me now? I can't do anything else. Have I just absolutely bombed? Or actually, has he found? Yes, has he found a way to just open up? And you won't do it every time. There'll be sometimes you can't do it, as I say, right? There'll be times when you're just like, this is a rubbish pub in the middle of Romford. They just want dick jokes. That's fine, right? But there'll be sometimes you just kind of go, actually, this is an art centre on a Sunday. Let's maybe try it out at a different time.
I'm gonna do it. Chris, that's all we've got time for, I'm afraid. But you've been absolutely amazing.
To chat about, yeah.
I know. To be fair, I'm gonna have to get you on again so we can go through the picture.
We haven't done the picture. Yeah,
no one's seen that yet, have they? So spoilers to come. We need to do that. But for the moment, Chris, thank you ever so much for coming on. It's been absolutely brilliant, and
that's fine. There will be a part 2.
There will be a part 100%, and I've learned a lot.
Good.
Today.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's all right. Like I've got an hour's drive in an hour. So I need my brain to sort of relax a bit after this.
Like digest what I'm talking about, absolutely. And the one thing I don't want to do is to give you too many things to think about. So just think about tonight, just pacing and humanity, if that helps.
That's what I'm going to do. And I'll record it and we'll whack it on there. Thank you ever so much, Chris.